She made the worst call of her life at exactly 6:42 on a Tuesday evening, a time when the sun usually just hangs there like a bruised orange over the valley. And I was standing barefoot on my patio, feeling the warmth of the stones under my heels, when a black cruiser rolled up the driveway with its lights killed and the engine just idling with that low, predatory hum, and out stepped her husband in full uniform, badge polished to a mirror shine, and one hand resting on his belt in that way that's meant to tell you the conversation is already over before it starts. And right behind him came Evelyn, clutching her HOA clipboard to her chest like it was a shield, and her lips were pressed so thin they'd almost disappeared, her eyes locked onto my pool gate with a look that was part hunger and part pure, unadulterated spite. And she didn't oppose to even say hello. She just barked that this pool was now HOA property, and I needed to hand over the keys right then and there, while her husband tilted his head just enough to let the light catch his sunglasses and said, and quote, "Sir, Len oppose. Let's not make this difficult," end quote. But what they didn't oppose to know was that this pool wasn't in oppose to just some backyard luxury. It was a fortress of paperwork they hadn't in oppose to bothered to read, and they definitely didn't in oppose to know that the cameras were already rolling, or that I'd been feeding a file to federal investigators for 3 months because this wasn't in oppose to the first time the board had tried to play God with someone in oppose life. And honestly, if you in oppose ever dealt with an HOA that thinks a badge or a title makes them untouchable, you're going to want to hear how this ends, because the next 5 minutes didn't in oppose to just break her career. It broke the entire system they'd spent a decade building. And I'm not really the kind of guy who goes looking for a fight. I'm a former contractor, a veteran, and I spent the better part of my later years in compliance, which is basically the boring art of making sure people follow the rules they agreed to. And if that life taught me anything, it's that you never raise your voice when the paper can do the talking for you. So I just stood there watching them, feeling the cool evening air, and thinking about how my grandfather bought this land back when the neighborhood was just dirt roads and dreams, long before any board or bylaws existed to tell a man what he could do with his own dirt. And the house was supposed to be my sanctuary, a place where the only thing I had to worry about was the pH balance of the water and whether the grill was hot enough for steaks. But Evelyn had this way of watching you without ever waving, of enforcing rules that seemed to vanish the moment her friends broke them, like the guy 3 houses down who parked his RV on the lawn for a month without a peep, while she sent me a certified letter because my trash can was visible from the street for 45 minutes after the truck passed. And you see, power is a funny thing in the hands of small people. It grows like a weed until it chokes out everything else. And she thought, because she had the clipboard and her husband had the Glock, that they owned the air I breathed. But my deed was a beautiful, dusty old document that predated their little organization by 20 years. And I'd read every single line of it until I could recite the easements in my sleep. So I didn't in oppose T reach for my keys. I reached for my phone, and I let the silence stretch out between us until it felt heavy enough to crack the pavement, because I knew that once I started talking, their world was going to start shrinking very, very fast. And it's funny how people like that always assume you're the one who's unprepared. They see a guy in a t-shirt and flip-flops, and they think they've already won. But I'd spent those 3 months documenting every whispered threat, every in quote, friendly in quote, warning, and every time her husband used that patrol car to idle outside my house for 20 minutes just to make sure I felt the weight of his presence. And when she stepped forward again, her heels clicking on my stone like she was counting down a fuse, I just smiled. Not a mean smile, just the kind of smile you give someone when you know something they don in oppose T. And I told her that she was standing on private property that was never annexed in her jurisdiction. And I watched the color drain out of her face just as the first sheriff's department vehicle pulled up behind their cruiser, because I hadn't and oppose T just called my lawyer. I called the people who actually handle civil rights violations when a local officer decides to moonlight as an HOA enforcer, and the look on her husband's face when he realized he wasn't in oppose T, the highest authority on the scene anymore, is something I'm going to carry with me to my grave. It was this slow-motion realization that the badge he was wearing was an end oppose T, a hall pass for his wife in oppose S ego. It was a liability that was currently burning a hole in his career. And As the federal agent stepped out of the second car, the air in the neighborhood just seemed to change. It felt lighter, like the vacuum of fear they created was finally being filled with actual accountability. And I stood there by my pool, listening to the water lap against the tile, and I realized that sometimes you have to lose your peace for a minute to keep it for a lifetime. And looking back at Dawn and Appos, to even hate her for it, I actually feel sorry for her, because she lived in a world where she thought she had everything under control, only to find out that she was the only one who didn't. And Appos, T know the rules of the game she was playing, and now the neighborhood is quiet again. But it's a different kind of quiet. It's the kind of quiet you get when everyone knows that the boundaries are finally real. And I often wonder if she ever thinks about that Tuesday evening. If she remembers the sound of those handcuffs, or the way the neighbors all stood on their porches and just watched her empire turn into a cautionary tale. But hey, that's just life in the suburbs, right? Where the grass is always green and the paperwork is always hidden until you need it most. And I guess the real question is, if someone came for your gate today, would you have the files ready to stop them? Or would you still be looking for your keys while they walked all over your rights? Because at the end of the day, a home ISN and Appos, T just four walls. And a roof, it's the dirt you stand on. And if you Don and Appos, T know exactly where your line is drawn, Don and Appos. T be surprised when someone else tries to draw it for you. But I'd love to hear what you think about all this. Do you think I went too far by bringing in the feds, or was it the only way to stop a bully with a badge? Let me know in the comments, because I have a feeling some of you have stories that would make mine look like a walk in the park.